Banned from LinkedIn. Banned from Facebook. Now broadcasting from the jungles of South America. Find out everything they don't want you to know. This is Biz Unlearned.
I was at Hewlett-Packard engaged to another woman, all right? When I met the woman that would be my first wife, we were in the mission critical division. I said, we're not doing that. This is in the middle of a management meeting. We're not doing that. She had like this stress Play-Doh and shit. She hurls it at my head. She throws this at my head. I look over at my buddy and I said, I think I'm sexually aroused. And we ended up getting married. Hey, it's Cowboy and Mark again with Biz Unlearned. And we've got a new guest today for episode 6. And this is going to be an interesting one for you, just like all of them. And so, Mark, why don't you lead off with the introductions?
Well, I will let Miss Nadia introduce herself in a second, but suffice to say that, she might mention that AI thing. She might mention the AI thing. She might mention that. But the reason that she's here, dear listeners, is because she's got a very different take on that. And even the stuff that Nadia and I do together it's like having this super duper machine or thing that the world can embrace, and Nadia's got a terrific way of helping people apply. So it's rather than AI being seen as this next big thing, it's just this super tool, which a lot of us we're all gonna touch it in some way, but we've all got to learn to embrace it in our Biz Unlearned businesses. And that's only a small amount of the reasons why Nadia's here today. So Nadia, from a Biz Unlearned position, which means we don't do elevator pitches, we don't do any of that stuff. We just do and I didn't tell Nadia I was going to say this, guys. So this is her direct, off the cuff response from a business unlearning perspective. Introduce yourself. Go where you want to go for a couple of minutes.
Well, thank you so much for having me on today. My name's Nadia, and I am the founder of Enchanted AI. And I think the biggest reason why I am passionate about this project that Mark and Bill have going is the fact that they are innovating the way we see business and the way we solve problems. And at its heart, I am a strategist and a problem solver. And I've been in the entrepreneurial world for, 12 years now. And I've made so many mistakes.
You're making us feel old with your 12 years, okay? She acted like that was a long time.
I know.
She acted like that was a long time, okay?
Next time I will say over a decade of experience. That might sound a little bit better. But I think one of the things is I've kind of seen how business have developed in the last 12 years, because when I got started, yes, the internet was big, but it was kind of in that boom when social media was happening. Things were growing and changing and evolving rapidly. And one of the things that I love about Mark's approach to it is I think in all of this innovation and all of this change and technology kind of sweeping us into a stream, we've kind of forgotten some of the old ways that really worked very well. And in that way, with us moving on with technology, we kind of are at that state where it's good to have a look back on how things were done 20, 30 years ago, and then looking at those and see, how can we change and adapt that to our new technological age that we are in, and use that old approach of one-to-one business, really connecting with your clients, really making a difference and taking the artificial out of it while also using the newest technology.
You see, he was smiling during that latter piece, Nadia, because I guarantee the word either something like you'll start to see him flinch, like because the word agile or scrum master, or he's hearing when you go there. That's what he's hearing because he knows, and he'll get it in somewhere when agile came along, and it's got some great principles. He says to somebody just being nice and English about it. However, linked to your point, it's easy to just go and be super creative, but being super creative in a commercial environment they're not mutually exclusive, but there has got to be a governance, at which point I'll go on, Bill, do your bit around how we lost our soul.
Well, he's right. I mean, and he knows me. That's exactly why I was smiling. I mean, because it was in Austin, Texas, where that started, and we end up in this situation a lot. And what I heard was, well, maybe we need to get back to some of these old ways. Like, that shit didn't really work. Okay, and now we maybe need to do some planning, and actually make some things happen. And I didn't know that you were going to say that at all, of course, but it's a very common theme. I hear time and time and time and time again, AI is going to change the world. It's like they're going to eliminate developers and stuff like that. And it's like bullshit. They're not going to eliminate developers because the customer still needs to know what the hell they want, and they don't. And so that's a huge thing. At the end of the day, it's just another tool. It's a great tool, but it's just another tool. And tools are no replacement for process. There's just no replacement for process. And you've got 3 brands, if I remember right, when I looked at your LinkedIn profile. So you want to tell us about those?
Yes. So we have in Enchanted, we've got 3 branches that we work with. Our first and baby branch is our kind of incubator that we use to test out marketing ideas, because if anything flops, no one's shouting at me. It's my thing.
Gotcha.
And with that, I quite leaned onto my previous experience in e-commerce, and it is digital products, Canva templates, things that can help small businesses stand out online and look pretty. And then we have our VA agency, and with that, I can't agree with you more, Will, when I say that a process is worth its weight in gold. If you don't have a good process, no matter how creative or good you are, nothing gets done.
Right.
So our VA agency, we started that because I was seeing a lot of problems with scaling from a solopreneur or a small business to your next level. And one of the biggest problems that we found with our clients, and that I found in the previous business that I built, was that cyclical nature of business. And especially if you're in a seasonal business. So I would find that by Q4, I could keep 6 people busy 10 hours a day, and I had enough money to do that. And by the end of Q2, when the summer months hit, I barely had enough work for myself, let alone another team. And it's expensive to hire staff. And the way I worked around that in my previous business was I hired VAs, and they helped me build my business. Now, the great thing about a VA is they're very flexible. The bad thing is it takes a lot to find one that works well with you. And I've worked with so many. So I wanted to fast track that for businesses. Like, you don't have to go and look for someone, and you don't have to commit. And that's how Enchanted VA was born. It's a place where you can buy X amount of hours, and they're valid for a year. And if you need us in February for 6 months, and you don't need us 6 hours, and you don't need us again till October, that's fine. You're still a client. We've still onboarded you. We know your business. And then we have our flagship, which is Enchanted AI. And at its core, Enchanted AI identify problems, find solutions and processes that help that problem, and then automate and scale them using AI. So even though it's Enchanted AI, the process is really where the spotlight is on rather than the AI bit. Because as you said, AI is a tool. And when you start using AI as a solution, it's going to fail because it's not a solution. It's just another tool, a really cool tool, a really effective tool, but still a tool.
And for all they know, Nadia, if you come back on the show at some point in the coming months, it may not be called Enchanted AI anymore because you're looking at the brand. You're evolving as you go. But in that summary of your brands, we started to, as in the episodes as the numbers have grown, and here we are on number 6, was people are starting to sort of say what are like the kind of like lines or mandates or things that are relevant to Business Unlearned, or what I sometimes call the new business paradigm, the new way of doing it. Because with your VA type experience, that has to be one of the examples of people looking to scale, because VAs are a very cost controllable way of doing that. But you also touched inside that, and why a service like you have can help, is the trick is to find a good one. Because like anything, when you, in our language, you partner or you contract, Bill would tend to use more, because the beauty of contracting is everybody knows where they stand. Everybody knows they're your responsibilities, they're my responsibilities. He's going to come up with, you got to deliver on that date. That, that's the point, because everybody's going in the employment world. And I think there was a LinkedIn post, and it was a business owner, and he got like a plaque standing up here of the requests he'd had just in the last few days of, can I go early because my dog's having got a toothache, a tooth appointment? Can I go early because... And he just wanted, he looked a nice guy, but he just, no, you can't, no, you can't. You can't. You got to do your job. But my kind of little pushback and play with it in the post was, see, that problem now, this swing towards, like, even my wife's gone back to work after years, after COVID, for strange circumstances. They have things like, you get extra days in lieu for your birthday, and it's all very nice. But from a business perspective, it can't continue. This whole business about, this is my job, this is your job, you do your bit. And of course, we're not saying get rid of compassion. We're pretty compassionate people. But we are saying we've got to bring back, that's my job, that's your job. If there's a problem, let us know and we can work around it. Because again, Bill's teachings and the project management stuff, we do use the line, plan like crazy, and then accept that no plan survives contact with the enemy. So really, it's about the adaptability, but it is about knowing where you're going in advance. And the VAs as one headline subject is definitely a key component in the new move towards increased individual accountabilities in the businesses. That's a big one for you, isn't it, Bill?
It was, I'm really looking back on something that I was doing with a partner. Unfortunately, he died, but and this was in 2007. But in 2006, we kicked off VA business. 2006, but it was not as widely accepted. Everyone was like, "What's this fucking VA shit?" So we were like way ahead of the curve. We saw it coming, and we're like, "This is going to be good stuff, man." But the timing was just not the best time. It was 2006, and people were like, what's all this VA crap? And so, I'm wondering, Nadia, I mean, how do you see timing as a play for what success has been?
I think timing is everything. And I think people underestimate the value of just waiting a little bit and not jumping into the river. And one of the examples that I use, and it's one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my AI career. I was working on a really cool tool that helped solve a problem, and I spent about 200 hours on it. So I put a lot of hours in it. And I also had quite a few developer friends that were doing something similar. And then OpenAI released GPTs. And in that day, startups and incubation projects fell left, right, and center because they tried to compete and outperform the current. And I learned a really valuable lesson. And it's one of the first ones I say to a client that wants to work with me. They come to me, this is the problem. Do you think there's an AI solution or another solution or automation or something? And I recently had a client that wanted to do something really specific. And I said to him, listen, we can do one of two things. You can chuck 100 grand at this, and we can go all system go, and I can involve a bunch of developers. Or you can start working on marketing and getting things out there and wait 6 months. Because in 6 months, one of the big tech giants and one of the big players are going to have an application where you can solve that exact problem and just use it and rebrand it or white label it. Right. So you save money by just waiting a little bit. And I think that is one of those things of when to jump into the river. That is a skill that can't be, it's a skill that you need to learn by experience rather than someone saying, jump into it now. And it's one of those things, and it's like a virtual assistant. Incidentally, I had the funniest conversation the other day with a prospective client about virtual assistants. And we were just talking over each other because I was saying, yes, your VA can do this, this, and this. And he was like, but I don't know if the technology is there to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, no, but your VA can do it. And because I work in AI, he thought a virtual assistant was an AI and not an actual person working with you virtually.
Not a person, right?
I was like, no, you misunderstand. A virtual AI isn't, a virtual assistant is an actually human that you can talk to.
Nadia, you're doing it again because you just reminded me of a good buddy of mine called Barry Mapp, who Bill will meet at some point in time. And Barry's, back in the day, he's a scientist. He's a proper, PhD, proper clever dude, scientist. And today he does Reiki healing and he does all kinds of things. But he's an interesting dude, is our Barry. And one of the things he would very much get into about the area that you're talking about is almost that, if you think about the subject matter of your AI tool and applications from it, and you're saying today on Biz Unlearned, sometimes the best thing is wait a little while. And if ever the AI latest next big thing, because Barry's on record and because he's a scientist, he'll give you the, stats and the evidence. He's very into all that kind of thing, which is terrific because you can go off and check things out for yourself. That in the event of a major problem, like, in a business situation, I'll do my best to quote him, but effectively, the highest value thing proven to do is nothing. And not nothing forever. And obviously, it's time-based. When the hurricane was coming in Florida in the last few days, there was certain time pressures of your period of nothingness. So the time changes, but it's the principle, isn't it, of, and I guess, I'm the Brit. We've got our adjunct Texana somewhere in South America. And we've got a South African in the UK-ish. So we've got a mixed bag. But culturally, and I guess the States is the most dominant one of this, we have been taught rugged individualism. And particularly from a male point of view and male leaders, being seen to do nothing is a sign of weakness. But
Yes.
statistically, it's a sign of strength and wisdom, because then it's almost like playing to Bill's gallery, a little bit of mental planning before you then go into what the big red leader can, because the role of leaders changing throughout all of this process, isn't it? So you are in your subject area as the next big thing, quite possibly highlighting the fundamental thing is sometimes the quiet do nothing before you then reach out. So that's another Business Unlearned maxim, isn't it?
One of the things that comes to mind here as you say that is the 5 stages of team building: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjoining. And I teach this a lot all over the world. And most managers see storming as a problem. We have conflict. I must jump in and do something. And especially in Texas, we're like, fuck it, let them work it out themselves. They're going to go outside, beat the shit out of each other, and it's going to be fine, okay? I mean, my father was a Marine Corps drill instructor, and he had a couple of guys drinking beers, kicking the shit out of each other, and the military police showed up, and it's like, hey, we're gonna take these guys in, Sergeant. He's like, you're not gonna do any such thing. Those guys are friends. They're gonna kick the shit out of each other. They're gonna be just fucking fine, and no one's gonna care. Okay, so just get the hell out of here. Okay? So I mean, that's a very much sometimes you just go, we can't do nothing.
I think that is really something really interesting. I often think that the fear of conflict is sometimes what's missing in a great team.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
if you're afraid to speak your mind, if you're afraid of conflict, you're kind of not using one of the best things, which is human interaction. And no, I don't like this. Yes, I like that. And I think one of the biggest things when having a team, and this comes from the management, is making everyone feel safe enough to beat the crap out of them if it's necessary to get to the end goal.
Absolutely. Okay, I was at Hewlett Packard, engaged to another woman. All right, when I met the woman that would be my first wife, we were in the mission critical
I did
division.
tell you, Nadia, didn't I? I did tell you he's got an interesting backstory.
Yeah, but I think you undersold it. It's proving to be even more interesting than you said.
I said, we're not doing that. This is in the middle of a management meeting. We're not doing that. She had like this stress Play-Doh and shit. She hurls it at my head. She throws this at my head. I look over at my buddy and I said, I think I'm sexually aroused. And we ended up getting married. So conflict does a lot of things. It's part of the team building process. It is. So that's very much a part of it and part of what I teach. And it's interesting that you've come along that yourself. I mean, did you take any classes in this, or did you just happen to find this from experience?
So this came from a mastermind session that I attended at CIBN, and they were talking about the Rockefeller technique and the 10 things the Rockefellers did every time they acquired a company. And there were 5 things that was led to a team not performing. And when I looked at that, the one that jumped out of me is fear of conflict, because that is something that we've had to work on really, really hard in our VA agency. I'm very much a mother hen when it comes to a leadership. That's why my partner is amazing, because she puts things into a perspective again. But one of the things we had to work on really hard was making everyone feel safe enough to be able to say, no, Nadia, you're wrong. You're not doing that every day. I do that every day. I am the expert in this. And it's something we're very passionate about. I actually say to my team, listen, if you do this more than I do this, then I'm the VA and you're the expert. Just
Mhm.
because I'm the leader of this team does not mean I am the expert in your job, because I don't do your job every single day. And we've had some amazing things come out. One of my VAs the other day, she was saying, can I please do this and this with the client? Can I ask the client this? And I was like, yes, this is amazing. I did not think about that. Natasha, my business partner, who's amazing at management, she didn't think of that. But if we had it with an iron fist rule and no, the managers know everything and you shall not say, we would miss out on so many opportunities. So that's kind of where that comes from.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean that's very true. You remind me of a situation where I was CIO at the company back in the '90s, and the president and sole owner was coming in a little bit later in the day, and we were only running one shift in this manufacturing facility. He goes, "The network gets slow at night," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's when I do backups." And he's like, "Well, can we do something about that?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can get your fucking ass to work earlier." And he's like, "You know, I own the company, right?" And I'm like, I don't give a shit. And he's like, okay.
I mean, that for me, we're laughing, but it is also part of the Business Unlearned because, you know, Bill characterizes that based on Bill being Bill, and you've got to earn the right to be able to say that. For
Yes.
most people listening, the wider point is this, whether we call it conflict or being able to, you know, I grew up, my mother's line when we were kids, she always told us a cousin or whatever at art school was told to feel free to criticize. But at the end of the term, he got thrown out of college. So it becomes, well, it becomes a family line that is like, yeah, they might say that, but they don't mean that. But if you look at this from a business perspective, when in Bill's world, and mine's a bit different, but huge crossovers, this contractor piece that he would call it, which is really only people coming together in teams or projects to do specific things that then they might break up again when it goes back to operations inside a business. But what that does is it spells out clear ground rules, clear consequences, the way things are done. And what we've currently got is the employer world, which is this up down relationship. And again, I don't know the British stats, they're not as extreme as the US stats. The current US dissatisfaction with the work environment and co-workers is off the charts. It's never been so high. It's always been dissatisfaction with bosses because where were you at 5 to 8 this morning and all of that kind of nitpicking. All of that goes away in whether it's Bill's project management drive to this or my just kind of JV collaboration, because it's what it's doing fundamentally is putting accountability right at the front of the business process. That seems to be where you two, through your experiences, are kicking this around. It is bringing accountability right to the front of the process.
I think in our agency, when a problem comes out, and one of the biggest challenges, and I've talked about this with you, Mark, one of the biggest problems in businesses that we work with is they don't know what the problem is. So identifying the problem is step number one. A lot of time, people have an outcome problem, but they don't understand the process problem or what's leading to that problem. So identifying the problem is sometimes the most difficult part of working with a client. If a client comes to me and says, I don't get any leads, then, okay, but why? How do you go about it? There's 100 different things that happens before I'm not getting leads. So that is one of the things that we are probably finding most is teaching businesses what questions they want and need to ask to get the results that they want.
Ultimately, it's scope the problem. Right? Triple constraints of project management. Very simply, Scope, time, and resources. Boom, done. This is what I have to do. This is the time I have to do it in, and this is what I have to do it with.
And I think that the other end of that is very much what I always say is I love criticism. Like, I love it when someone comes to me and says to me, Nadia, this is crap, and that is crap. Because that's gold. I can change things. We know what's crap. If we know what's crap, we can make it good. And I think a lot of businesses, and I've seen this in the tech world, working with a couple of tech groups, and sometimes the tech developers and the real techie guys, they remind me a little bit about like the artist thing. Like, don't criticize my invention. Like, this comes from the inside of me, and it's like they're the new artists. Honestly, sometimes it's very entertaining. And I had a scenario the other day, like when I release a new tool or system, I've got a guinea pig list, and my guinea pig list is full of machine science, data scientists, people that are really clever, much more clever than I am, and they're brutally honest. Like, if I give it to them, they're gonna rip that to pieces. So I was in a call with a developer, and I was saying, like, maybe get a guinea pig list. Like, find the 10 people you know that is the most critical people that will tear things into pieces, and then send your stuff to them, and you will fast track your project by 6 months. Like, you will. It's like setting everything on fire, and then we build from the ashes. And these two guys were looking at me like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not ready to send it to them. We don't want to do that. And I'm like, yeah, because you know that this is going to like upset everything. So I think the number one thing is get thicker skin. As a business person, as a business owner, get thicker skin. This is not a place for feelings. If we want to be innovative and achieve things, it's put the ego outside, leave the ego at the door, and let's make some stuff happen.
So that's your latest one then, Nadia. That we don't know each other that well, but we've spent quite a bit of time recently, and whether it's as we charmingly call you, Barbie White Witch, the geek, the whole geeky sort of feel and stuff, but you position so highly on this, I don't know, like a quest for knowledge or just a third, and really, really liking that, and that's great. But it also means that you've created this place that most people do not want to go, which is you almost love what the world calls criticism. Because in your mindset, somewhere that's kind of going to either like this will speed up the process, or it's one of our old maxims that, I don't know, we got from a guy called Mitchell J. Perry years ago, and it was taking things too personally. He might have been a Texan, by the way, Bill. He might have been a Texan, but it was the taking things too personally. And so from a Biz Unlearned point of view, this is one of the, because part of my mind, once we've got 25 of these, excuse me, we'll have kind of communication ground rules, kind of maxims and things that are coming out. But this one seems a central one, because that rugged individualism piece, which kind of looks all, but actually underneath it is jelly, because you can't criticize. So whether it's you get kicked out of art school or in football, oh yeah, we don't mind you giving feedback, but not at half time, son. It's so say one thing and do the other. Because what you're really describing is, if we're going to get with what marketing calls product market fit, which in my simple terms is go talk to people and get feedback, we have to get into this area. And the closest words, and Bill will have his version of it, is about thicker skin. But people are going to the opposite place with, you triggered me and I'm getting all upset. And whether we solve it on the contractor bit, the accountability bit, but the mindset bit comes to, I've got to toughen up a bit. We have.
Mark and I've talked about it several times. We've become an excuse culture worldwide. Okay, you fucking call up these people. Maybe it's my hosting company, maybe it's somebody else, or whatever, and it's like the damn site's been down 2 weeks, and you're trying to talk to them, and they're like, well, I'm sorry, but you've offended me, so I'm hanging up, and it's like. It's like, fuck you. Okay. It's like, I mean, and they tell their manager that they just hung up, and that's an excuse. And it's like, did you complete anything today? Did you help any customers? Whereas if they were a contractor, you would be like, okay, not counting today, how long have you worked here? Get off my planet.
I think that is so true. And I think we have this culture at this point where I want to do anything not to offend someone, because offending someone has, in the last 10 years, become the great sin. And
Yes.
this might be from my upbringing in South Africa, like, get tougher skin.
By the way, I taught Dave and Joe Berg. I loved it. Okay.
I was raised by a boomer, and it's like, get tougher skin. Like, my mum is an absolute angel. I love her. She's one of the best people ever. Growing up, because I've always done art, and growing up, my mum, who's a Capricorn, she when I brought something home and my art wasn't good, she threw it away. Like, my mum threw it away. And you know what? When I did something really good, she framed it. And that meant a lot. Like,
yes.
that showed me, wow, so this was really good. And I think in our society, we've become so scared of offending people or stepping on toes. And I like to say, you know what? No death certificate ever in the history of the world has offense as a cause of death.
Right.
What's the worst thing that can happen when you're offended? What's the worst thing that you're offended? Okay.
Nadia, again, in a world that talks about demographics, which I'm pretty sure people listening know what that term is, you are somewhat of a different demographic to us two. And, your cultural background, the South African bit, and describing with your mother, because the story with your mother is almost we've got a comedy from years ago in the States, and the character is competitive dad. And no matter what the kid does, the dad's done better. And it's kind of an anti-hero role today, because what you're highlighting for your demographic is your mother's version on this. To most people would be seen as a bit extreme. It would be seen as a bit extreme.
I also produced like 20 art pieces a week, so it got to be a lot. Like, it was.
But the trade-off is, because there's no right answer here, but the trade-off is she was teaching you something about standards. And it's that standards piece that then people get into about. My kind of word of last year, bit this year, but last year was, I realized something, that culture's a big word. It's all about culture, isn't it? But one of my Australian partners, they do coaching with big companies like Rio Tinto, really big mining companies. And they effectively provide coaches into very targeted areas within these big companies. And he gave me the word on something that I'd lived in for years, and it really clarified things, which is, we've got all this culture, but he looks at all the analysis as to why people leave companies, and it's for all of that, don't like my co-workers, don't like the boss, all these little kind of nitty-gritty, not because of the vision of the board, culture, and the word for that is climate. And it kind of told me that I've always been the interface between boards and big visions. And then I go back to the people who talk to the customers and listen to their view of the world. And it's very different to the boardroom. And it's living in that space, and then the different cultures, but fundamentally it's driven by the day-to-day climate. And everybody's saying that's polluted. But your different background, your purview on the world seems to fit very much with mine and Bill's on this one, which is we can't solve this based on what you can and can't say. We've got to create different structures, my word, of working together, because then you find the true birds of a feather that will flock together and they'll get good jobs done.
Yeah, this is very interesting because Tim and I were working on a project for Austin, Texas, and he was doing AI, and he was trying to train his robots to do these dial-up calls and bring people in to raise funds. Right? And he goes, "I know you know Austin, Texas, man. It's like I want to sit next to you and see what you do to get people into this room because I need people in this room." And okay, and I'll pay for each person that gets in the room. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I called up one guy who happened to be an ex-Navy SEAL, but a salesperson. And I'm like, yo, motherfucker, I haven't heard from you in about 5 years. Call me up, right? And he's like, and so he calls me back, and because this is the voicemail. And he's like, I don't get a lot of voicemails that say, yo, motherfucker. And he's like, yeah, what do you need, man? Okay. And he was in the room. Boom. Yeah, no problem, dude. I'll do it. Okay. And he's like, I can't teach my AI robot to do that.
Now Nadia, this is climate. See, that's the reality of where Texans that get mixed with Californians, and there's a bit of a cultural rub, but it comes out in the day-to-day climate where they got their cowboy hats on and bottles of beer, and other cultures don't quite see it the same way.
This was a big clash between it was the largest IT merger in history, Compaq and HP. I was there. Okay. One. Compaq was seen as the Texas guys that didn't really follow rules. We had refrigerators in our office full of beer. We had barbecue pits. We had pool. We had a basketball court, gym, the works, and HP were the little pocket protector guys, but we had all the intellectual property and stuff, right? And so after the merger, people started saying, fuck you, I'm out of here. And it's like, well, why is everyone leaving? So they're doing exit interviews. They're like, why is everyone leaving? And it's like, you took the beer. This is how we do business. All right. Because the CEO would literally have like one shirt tail in, one shirt tail out, so he could pop a top on a beer to the next meeting. And they're like, okay, we'll bring back the beer. Okay. But everyone was leaving. And it's exactly what we were talking about a contract relationship. We didn't go to other companies. We all went independent. And then when it came time to do a project together, it's just like, well, hey, let me call Jim. Or, hey, let me call David. And we put the teams right back together. Only now we were all independent contractors. But we put the teams right back together, And so that's really the crux of it all. But yeah, culture was huge.
This is the Englishman trying to look cool in a hat. This is actually an Australian hat, but it doesn't work anyway. This is our 5-minute warning that says we've got to do our wrap up. This is the bush hat that says to Nadia, that we're trying to be disciplined in our what is it? Not the outtake, the outro, the getting out of these things.
Yes.
From your point of view, because you've made some really kind of key. When I'm on the hunt for these Business Unlearned, it doesn't come down to a charter, but it does help people, doesn't it? It just gives people and we're playing and we're laughing, and that story that Bill just told is kind of one end of the extreme, but it makes a point because we could almost do a comedy sketch of this kind of stuff, but we are making serious points that says if you don't accept the culture, like we saw it a lot where big mergers, one in the city that we were involved in, a Dutch bank and a very stiff English bank, and the Dutch guys arrived with what they assured us was herbal tobacco, and they would walk around with no shoes on. They didn't wear ties. they're all very, sort of chilled. And the English in the banquet were in their pinstripe suits. These Dutch guys they were the dominant, they bought, so they were the big dogs. We're going and spending £400 on a chair in 1990. So this is a bit of a cultural. So this stuff is important because then we drill it down to climate, the individual offices, the individual booths. What's your sort of closing comments on your take on what's business got to unlearn from what you're seeing at that climate coalface?
I think when it comes to climate, the only way to have a consistent acceptance of everyone and where they come from is to, once again, encourage authenticity, because that's what it is at its core. I mean, I'm a woman in tech. I'm bubbly. I'm very positive. Even though I'm straightforward and I go to the point, I'm bubbly and positive. And the first couple of times people work with me, they kind of look at me like I'm a bit crazy because I'm so go, positive, white witch Barbie. But after a while, they realize that I'm not putting on an act. That's really me. So I think when climates converge, and like you said, with the English people and the Dutch guys and everything, it's just like if you're authentically yourself, regardless of the climate, you're going to find where you fit in.
Right.
But it's making people feel safe enough to be themselves authentically. Because I think a lot of the times, and I have friends and family that work in Fortune 500 companies and things, the climate forces them to act a certain way. There was probably a couple of guys that would have loved to hang out with the Texans and have beer at lunchtime, but they didn't feel safe enough to say, oh yeah, we like these guys, approach more. So I think addressing everyone being allowed to be themselves, you get so much good info, you get so much good ideas, and everyone's just performing at their best. So I think with climate, that's kind of my takeaway with that.
And we're an example of it. The Englishman, the South African lady in England, the Texan American, because they're not the same as New York Americans in sunny Ecuador or wherever you are today, Bill. I mean, it can change. It can change.
They can change it in moment's notice, yes.
Come to London, I'll buy you a beer.
We're an international group linked by tech, aren't we, on that basis? So that's where the tech bit gets a mention, gets a...
Yep.
on that. So wrap us up, Bill, then, in terms of your take on Biz Unlearned today with Miss Nadia.
So how can people get a hold of you? You know what I mean? If they're going to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
I think LinkedIn, if they've got LinkedIn. If they don't, the email address.
Yeah, that's good.
Or our website. But yeah, just reach out to me. I'm up to chat with literally anyone, and my favorite thing on earth is to sit and chat about AI. So anyone can reach out to me. I only
watching. People are hopefully getting the sense that what everybody that's on this call, and starting with me and Bill, is, and even some of the points Nadia's made about great communities, because it's another business word that's used all the time, and they're not communities because they're just people selling you in terms of Bill would call SHIT. But there's no dialogue. It's not a community really. A real community has all kinds of people in it, and you can answer back. And there are points of difference. It's like an extended team, and you're active and you're inactive, and there's a cause maybe or a thing that it does. But that's what almost the key business learned point is becoming, that we've got to take some of these maxims, you've got to allow the feel free to criticize. You've got to allow the differences around set the culture, the mission and vision stuff, but then you got to work on that climate, what we call the win environment. The footballers like that term. There's like, how do we make it an environment where we win? But joking aside, it's an important thing if the game is to win a football match, if that's the challenge, if that's the target. So thank you, Nadia. Terrific. I've only known you recently, but my instinct says you're going to be a big part of the community of what the hell we're all building. Take us out, Bill.
Very good.
Thanks for
Very
having
good.
me.
Pleasure.
Well, once again, guys, we're going to wrap up. So remember to like, comment, and share, subscribe. We love to love, and we will be seeing you soon.
Remember to like, comment, share, and hit the subscribe button. That helps us grow our channel, which helps us get larger guests.